In this lesson, I'm going to talk about two-handed tapping technique on the bass and how I use it to gain a deeper understanding of harmony and chord voicings on the bass. Now, typically, when we learn chords, and then we learn arpeggios from our triad, seventh chords, extensions, etc., we learn them from the bottom up. So if I take E, for example, an E major chord, I've got E, the root, I've got G sharp, the major third, I've got B, the fifth, and then if I want to keep going, of course, I've got D sharp, the major seventh, I've got F sharp, the nine, etc. But I'm going to do this a little bit differently today. I'm going to take sort of a piano voicing that I learned from Yannick Gwizdala, a wonderful bass player and educator that all our bass players are probably very familiar with. He's great, look him up. What he talks about is on piano, placing the root in the bass and then a tenth on the top. G sharp, the third, which is up an octave, a tenth. So the E would be the root note in this example, and then I place the G sharp, which is the major third, up one octave as a tenth. So let's play that on the bass. I've got E, I've got the tenth of E, major tenth, major third, G sharp up one octave, okay? And then of course, I've got F major and F sharp or G flat and G, and I can do tenths all over the bass. They're fantastic. And then minor as well. Drop the G sharp down a half step to G natural. It's E minor, F minor, etc. Now, the next thing I'm going to do that is a little bit different, that is going to bring this two-handed tapping idea in, is I'm going to fill in the rest of my chord by literally filling in between those two physical notes, those spaces on my bass. And the frets were, again, E here on the 12th fret and G sharp up on the 13th fret, root and 10th. Now, I play that with my left hand, and I can use my pointer finger and pinky, or I can use my pointer finger and ring, whatever you like to do is fine. And the joke of this lesson is I don't really play two-hand tapping at all. I'm just using it here as a way to help me understand how to build chord voicings on the bass in a different way that, for me at least, seems a lot easier than building them from the bottom up. I guess that's how my brain works, and that's why I'm showing you this sort of different method. And a lot of it has to do with, I like the sound of the chord voicings on this way with the 10th on the top as opposed to down here, which is a little muddy sounding. But anyway, that's a personal preference. E and G sharp to start. Now I'm going to add the fifth with my left hand, my pointer finger, which is B. Okay, there's the B. And then I'm going to throw in another voice on the D string. The B was on the A string, but I'm going to throw in another voice by throwing an F sharp in, the 9 on the D string. And so I get this nice full-sounding chord, and it actually ends up being just an E9 chord. E, the root, and then I've got the third up here, because I like the sound of that, which is the G sharp. Then I've got the B natural, the fifth, and then I've got the 9, F sharp. And I can play them in order. The other way. Okay. Now I can take that whole voicing and make it F9. So I just move it up to F. And then back down, etc. Now I'll do the minor, which is E minor, 9, because all I did was change one voice. I dropped the major third, the G sharp down, to a G natural. And that takes me to the next part of this. And for you guys who like to play tapping, have fun with this, compose with it, improvise with it, whatever you like to do. I'm going to just experiment with moving different voices in the chord, sometimes one, sometimes several voices, up and down a half step, and that's usually referred to as voice leading. I'm just trying to create chord changes and motion within my improvisation or composition, or in this case, just in an exercise, just to hear the differences when I move intervals. So I build again, E and G sharp. So I'm building from the outside in, the bottommost string and the topmost string of the voicing. And there's the 9, so it's the fifth and the 9. Now I'm going to move the root down. Okay, so I create this exotic sounding chord, which has got an E flat now in the bass, and I've just moved the E to the E flat, and so now I've got a chord that's rooted in E flat. Now, could you think of it as an E9 chord with E flat in the bass or maybe it's like an E major 7/9 chord over E flat, but there's no E in the voicing. You can think of it that way, or maybe you can think of it as an E flat. On the top now, I've got a 4th, an 11th, and now I've got a flat 6 or a sharp 5 here on the A string, and up here I've got a minor 3rd. So it's a whole nother chord, but I don't have to think that deep. You know, I don't have to explain it theoretically like that at this juncture. I can just think of it as an E9 chord moving the root to an E flat, just bouncing back and forth. However we want to play it, whatever order you want to play it. Let's go back to the E. Now I'm going to move the second voice that I built here on the A string up a whole step to from the 5th, which is B, to a C sharp, which is the 6th or the 13th. Whole nother chord. So experiment with this, have fun with it. All I'm trying to show you here is not really a tapping lesson, although you certainly can steal my poor tapping technique that I have, that I barely ever use, especially on gigs. You won't see me do that often. It's possible, but you know, use it to taste, like when you're cooking. A little too much is not that great, unless you're an amazing tapper like Victor Wooten or John Ferreira or Evan Brewer. Those guys are all awesome. Check them out for tapping technique and sound and compositional ideas. I'm just using it to help with ear training, and that's really the trick of this lesson, or the joke of this lesson, is that I'm hearing the voices that are possible on my instrument. You know, this is 5 string, so I can add the 5th string, but even if you're just playing 4 string, you've got 4 voices right there. You can have a lot of fun moving them all around. Okay. Just by experimenting with moving them around like a voice leading way of half steps and whole steps up and down. And then what that'll ultimately help you with, which is more important than any of this, is playing with other folks, if that's what you want to do, and interacting with them. It'll help you hear what the piano player, guitar player, what they're doing in the band. It'll open your ears up. And then you can turn this into little etudes, not for tapping. You can even create melodies, melodic ideas, by messing with arpeggios within the structure of these little tapping chords that you've created. So thank you so much for watching this. For those who have subscribed, and for those who have are watching this channel for the first time. I haven't done a lot of lesson content recently. Been busy gigging and doing some other projects, but I want to get back into that now. And this will be a first in a series of lessons, as opposed to building lesson content from the beginning on up, which I originally intended to do. I think now I'm just going to focus more sporadically on concepts that are inspiring me, like this idea that I actually got from listening to piano players and learning from other instrumentalist bass players and otherwise, in terms of voice leading and building chords. So as my inspiration, as I get inspired, as that happens, I'd like to share with the people here on YouTube who are interested in expanding their knowledge or finding inspiration themselves within music and music theory, both rhythmically and harmonically and melodically as well. And so I'll post at those points in time. And I hope that you get something out of this. And remember, it's not just about the technique of tapping, which is very cool. It's really about expanding your understanding of the chord voicings available to you on bass, so you can then apply that new ear training that you have to working with within the context of a band or a collaborative project. So this is Lawrence Haber Music. Please like, subscribe, and share.